everyone, and welcome. Thank you for being here today. My name is Angela Clement, and I am the host of Awaken Your Soul's Journey Beyond Grief, Finding Your Way in the Unknown. And today I have with me Derek Rydall. And Derek is, he's an author. He also has a lot of background and experience in training Fortune 500 companies. He's got his own Emergent podcast, and I see a blog. The thing that took me or caught my eye with Derek was that he had a video, a YouTube video up, and it was titled Great Grieving and Why We Must Go Through It. And he talked about surrendering and what that truly means, and had such a great story around that. And also kind of bringing up the question, what is trying to emerge for us when we are moving through our grief? And also there was a quote on that on the site that said, at a time when so many are feeling fearful and uprooted, Emergence will bring you home again, where you'll find peace, inspiration, and the power to finally fulfill the purpose for which you were born. And so I just love all of that. I'm super excited to delve deeper into all of it with you, Derek. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here today.
Thank you, Angela. It's my honor and pleasure to be here.
Okay, well, thank you. And
I don't remember that specific video. I mean, I remember doing it, but I don't remember the content and when I did it. But I personally had a deep, tragic loss as well. My journey. So I don't know if we will get a chance to talk about that, but I have a very, very close and personal journey with grief. There's many layers and types of grief.
Right.
You can have grief just over losing your job.
Mm-hmm.
And, I remember when my daughter was young and we moved to a new house, and she was grieving over the loss of the refrigerator. She was literally sad. She's like, I really miss our white refrigerator, Dad. And of course, that was representative of those moments in that home. And she's young and everything is big and new. So It's important to know that grief has many, many layers and levels. But I've also experienced a very, very deep loss. So that will be something we can talk about.
For sure. Yeah. And so that's kind of where I'd like to start, is you just telling us a little bit more about yourself, your journey, and, how you got to the place where you are now.
Yeah. So, like so many people, I, started off this journey on a journey of personal development and self-help. And initially it was, I suffered from depression and anxiety and different things, and didn't feel like people really got me, and I wasn't really living up to my purpose. And so I was on a journey of personal development. This was in my 20s, and just a few years ago. And I remember all the self-improvement, all that I improved was my ability to describe why my life wasn't working. I by exploring it all, I just felt more frustrated. And it eventually drove me to alcohol and drugs, almost dying from an overdose. And then, even then, I'm like, how did all of my efforts lead me to there? I'm lying in the emergency room with an IV and the doctor telling me I was lucky to be alive. And I was like, something's wrong with this picture. I still don't get it. And I just need to work harder or work smarter or try to attract more or something. And then things got better for a moment, but then while I was doing a film in Jamaica, I nearly died of drowning. And in that experience, and I remember the experience, I was feeling very frustrated as well. And I went on this dive, and I prayed to get lost from everything above, and I got lost in this labyrinth of coral. And I got stuck underwater in this pocket. I won't go into all the details. I describe it in depth in my book, Emergence, and in many other podcasts and stuff. But there was a moment where I knew I wasn't going to make it. Or so I thought. I really believed. Nobody knows I'm out here. It's getting dark. There's sand sharks swimming below me. I can't go down underwater and swim out. There's spiked coral everywhere. I can't even lift my head out of the water to see where I'm stuck anymore, because I'll be skewered by these spiked coral. Couldn't breathe barely. And I was, I tried to make a deal with God. If you get me out of this, I promise to go to church on Sunday, kind of thing. And God was not playing, let's make a deal. And there was a moment of true surrender, of just a deep, unconditional surrender. And in that moment, there was a flash, and I had a vision, and I saw that the self I'd been trying to fix and heal and improve was a figment of my imagination, was an amalgamation of peer pressure and parental fantasy and societal conditioning. And nothing I would do was ever going to make that guy enough, because he was a character. But there was a self that was behind him or around him or beneath him. How I couldn't really describe it in spatial terms, but there was this other version. And this self had never been hurt or damaged. And so it didn't need to be improved upon or fixed. It wasn't broken, and it was already whole. And so it couldn't be improved upon. And I didn't understand all of that in that moment, but it was like Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall and there was no going back. And in the next moment, I was out of where I had been stuck. I'd somehow leapt out of the water. I still don't fully understand. And I was standing on top of this coral, looking out at where I'd been swimming in this maze I'd been caught in, and realized it was a metaphor for my life. I'd been swimming through a maze, following brightly colored things, really just trying to not be connected to what I really was feeling. And I was lost, and I was gasping for air, literally and metaphorically. And in that moment, I could see it. Something had shifted inexorably. And then I could literally, on the other side, I was complete freedom. There was no more coral, and I could just jump over the other side, and I was free. And I ended up pulling out of society after that, eventually, very quickly after that, and trying to become a monk. I didn't know what that meant. I just knew something had so radically shifted in me. It was a true spiritual opening. And the monk life didn't work out. That's a whole funny story. But I basically went on this journey of understanding what had happened to me. And what I saw was that this self that I saw is akin to the seed in everything. That there's a seed, there's an acorn, and the oak tree is already there. And the acorn it's not a broken oak tree that has to fix itself into an oak tree, right? The acorn isn't. It also doesn't, it's not an inadequate oak tree that has to improve itself into an oak. It's already perfect. It's a perfect acorn, and it contains the entire pattern and metaphysical or quantum reality of an oak already. And when the conditions are right, what it really is in potential emerges. Mm-hmm. And that is true of every seed in creation, including the seed of this universe, including the seed of you and me. There's a perfect pattern, a perfect idea, a unique expression of life, and of love, or of God, whatever you want to call it. And it's not lacking anything, and it can never be broken. It can only be covered over or opened up, and the right conditions made for its emergence. And then the thing about us is that we are a plant is indigenous, so it needs external conditions for it to thrive. We are fundamentally endogenous, which means we are like walking greenhouses. We can bring the right conditions for our own emergence, even if the sun isn't out or it's raining or whatever the situation. And in fact, we can use whatever situations or conditions we have gone through and that we do face to extract the vibrant or vital nutrients that can allow us to grow and to thrive, like the lotus growing out of the mud. We can take the mud of our life, or the crises of our life, or the challenges of our life, and alchemize that into the nutrients and the light and the love and the wisdom that we need to thrive and to ultimately fulfill our potential. So that's, if a seed is just left on a rock, it of itself can't create the conditions. But if we find ourselves in the desert, we still can. And so that's the great news and the good news that the great master teachers were trying to tell us, basically. So that's what got me on the journey. That's what eventually led me to write the book, Emergence, which was a best-selling book. And then the book I wrote after that, The Abundance Project, was taking these ideas into the area of the law of circulation, how to create an abundance of whatever, love, opportunity, or whatever, money, whatever. But also along the way, a really core part of my journey, was to flip the script where it wasn't about using God or using the soul or using all the stuff in the world to get, or using all of the spiritual stuff to get more things in the world, but how to use everything in our life and in our world to more fully awaken the soul, which is so perfect here, that there's a potential in us that is trying to break forth. And most of us have been conditioned or hypnotized to believe, well, if only this outer condition would change, if only that didn't happen, if only that did happen, if only I could get more of that, if only I had less of that, if only she would do this, if only he would stop doing this, right? And we've been conditioned to believe we're at the whim of and victims of conditions, and we have to either wait for them to change, or we have to force the change, or we have to manipulate or control or cajole, or there's certain changes that make us believe it's too late or that's not possible because something's missing forever. And this principle of emergence, which again, I didn't make up. It's the same teachings as Jesus and Buddha. It's just it's my own unique experience of it and my own unique, expression of it, but it's not new. It's, Jesus said, take no thought for your life, but seek first the kingdom of heaven. Buddha said, let go of desire, craving, and aversion, and become still and realize nirvana. It's the same teaching. And I'm just saying it in a way that's maybe not spoken in the King's English or in Aramaic or, in Chinese or something. But that's the basic idea, and that is the good news. The good news, which is the gospel, is that no matter what you've been through, no matter what you're going through, the potential in you is always greater than the problem or the obstacle you face. And in fact, that problem or obstacle is really your ally in the activation and the unfoldment of that potential. Right. So I'll stop there to give me a breath and give you a chance to digest it and see where you want to go next. But I really want to say this because there's one more thing is, I'm not saying this as a person who, well, that's easy for you to say. You've made millions of dollars and you've got this no, I've gone through most of the tragedies and the challenges and the crises that the average or below average or above average person has gone through, from losing fortunes to losing my child, to divorce after decades of marriage, to the falling apart of family, to being, losing all my friends, to my business collapsing, to physical challenges. I've experienced my own little mini Job story. Job is the guy that loses everything in the Bible, as a way to test, do you really believe and have faith? And so, and I've practiced and applied this in every example. Like I said at the beginning, including losing my son, which was, it's unimaginable, and, the love of my life. And not that long ago, it was a few years now. It was during the pandemic. And he was young and he was just on the verge of living his dreams. So I know what deep, deep suffering and tragedy and pain, and I know too. And it's important to understand that, because this isn't theoretical. It doesn't mean it's easy. Awakening the soul, if you're listening, you're watching, and you really want to awaken your soul, little disclaimer, Surgeon General warns, this truth may utterly annihilate everything that you knew before. The truth will set you free, but it first it will scare the crap out of you and piss you off and give you road rage and annihilate you, so much of things. I think it was Marianne Williamson that said years ago something about, you thought that, finding God or spirituality was going to be like remodeling your house or adding some new. It's like, no, it's just going to take a wrecking ball to the house you've got because the foundation is broken and cracked. And what you need is a new foundation first. And that is the fine print. That is why the great teacher said you have to learn to die daily and be reborn again and again. You have to not judge by appearances. You have to find a different value system where what you value is not something that is given and taken away.
Right.
So there's a lot to unpack there, but a real spiritual journey, a real soul awakening, if we're going to get real, that's a mystical path. It's not a new age self-help path.
Right.
It's a mystical path. And if you actually look at like the story of Jesus as an example of one individual that awakened their soul and helped many others do the same, if you believe that, he was an utter and complete failure in the context. If you just drop down into that moment, everybody abandoned him. He was wrongfully imprisoned, unjustly executed. He was like some guy on death row, just some dude on death row that was some prophet, on the street corner. And it was an utter, abysmal, unjust, unfair disaster in that period. And obviously it certainly wasn't, but in that short-term experience, when there was all this loss and tragedy and betrayal and abandonment, it wasn't, and even after for a long time, it wasn't like the Romans suddenly said, okay, let's leave these Jews alone now. They're good. Jesus was a cool guy. Let's, and the church went, you know what? We've been too hard and making them pay us all these tithes and all these rules. Let's actually live a spiritual life now. Nothing changed. Nothing. Except everything changed.
Right.
And so he knew that, and ultimately the people that followed that teaching, the reason the resurrection, the reason the word kept spreading was because they were having an inner experience. They were becoming liberated. Their soul was on fire with love and with light and with joy, even and especially in the midst of all the problems still going on. So that's an important thing to remember, even during the time of Buddha. It wasn't like after Buddha's great teaching, all the caste system dissolved in India and all the poor people got rich and all the people that were the outcasts were welcomed in with loving arms. None of that happened, except all of that happened in their souls.
Right.
And so that's an important piece for people to understand, because I think one of the things that corrupts a true soul awakening path is we conflate it with, if I just awaken my soul, then I'll have more money. Then all my problems will go away. Then I'll, heal and I'll get a great job and I'll be a powerful influencer in the world. And then I'll have a lot more followers and likes and whatever. And it doesn't mean that won't happen. That's the trick. It probably will if your soul really awakens. But you can't seek to awaken your soul for that purpose, because then you're not actually interested in the soul. Then it's a quid pro quo. Then what you really think matters and what you really value most is material, is temporary, not eternal, not spiritual. And it can actually create a lot of struggle and pain when you are divided that way. Again, it doesn't mean don't go for the good stuff, don't have a beautiful home and money and all that. It's just when it comes to our soul awakening journey, to the process and to that deep sacred vow, I want to wake up. I want to know the truth that makes me free. I want to be a transparency of God or love. I want to allow the full light of whatever version, heaven, God, nirvana, whatever works for you, that's the virtue in itself.
Mm. Mm.
And then from there, you get up off your cushion, off your lotus position, off of whatever it is you're doing, and you go make dinner, or you go do the laundry, you go to the gym, or you go write your book. That's fine. But when it comes to, and that's what Jesus said when he said, don't take any thought about any of those external things. Just seek first heaven and its righteousness, which means the right discernment, the principles, the understanding of the truth. And then all of those things will be added unto you.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Right? So
Yeah.
that's an important. Okay, I'm taking a breath now.
Okay.
I
Well,
want to hear more, but I think that's really important, and nobody else is going to be talking about that. So
yeah, that's right. And so I want to back up a little bit because you had said something about our circumstances. No matter what they are,
yeah,
we have the ability to nurture that seed within us. No matter what, and so that kind of struck a chord with me because I'm thinking about decisions, going into the unknown, making decisions, and having a fear around making the wrong decision, doing the wrong thing. And it just kind of popped into my head that, no matter what decision is made or what path you take, what you're saying is you can always find a way to nurture that within you.
yeah, it's a really good point. And of course, one of it's a deep fear of a lot of people. How do I know if this is my ego talking or my spirit talking? And how do I know if this is the right decision versus the wrong decision? And one of the things that's important, there's an old metaphysical axiom that says, to he or she who is right, they probably just said to he because they didn't do the he, she then, but to he who is right in mind, he can still do all the wrong things, it'll turn out right. But to he who is wrong in mind, he can do all the right things and it's going to still turn out wrong. And so the important thing to know is our intention and the purity of our intention is what is paramount. It's the number one thing. It's why am I doing it? My true intention, I'm conscious of my intention. There's no hidden agenda here as far as I can tell, is to love, is to serve, is to whatever the thing is to be a good citizen, whatever the reason is we're making a particular decision. Mm-hmm. And then as we and also that we understand, as we said, that what we're really building is a state of consciousness and a state of being. We're not, that's again, Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world. You guys think I'm coming here to fix this world. That's not what I'm coming here for. I'm coming here to wake you up to the real world, which is in consciousness, which is in your soul. And you're building your own field of dreams, but it's in your own heart. It's not that home is where the heart is. It's your heart is where your home is. You actually live in your heart, in your mind, in your consciousness. And what you're building is a beautiful, beautiful world in your own awareness. So that practice allows you to know that even if I do the wrong thing out there, even if things don't work out, I can always keep coming home again and rebuilding, bringing more love, more forgiveness, more compassion, more understanding, more faith, et cetera, et cetera. And you can always do that. And you can never be stopped from that. Nelson Mandela in prison for 27 years, he got free and was living in a beautiful place while he was being tortured. That's that poem Invictus, where he talked about the captain of his own fate and his own soul, the master of his soul, or the master of his fate and captain of his soul. And when he finally was set free, the power of freedom he had embodied allowed him to free the country and become president and end apartheid. That didn't happen after he got out of prison. That happened while he was in prison.
Right.
Apartheid ended while he was in prison. Nobody just knew about it yet. It hadn't manifested. It's like when Michelangelo sculpted the David and Goliath story. Mm-hmm. He didn't sculpt him at the moment when he slew David or Goliath, or when he was training. He sculpted the David at the moment when David knew that he would and that he could slay Goliath. In that moment, he had the revelation. it was done already.
Mm.
And everything else was just the unfoldment of that realization. So all of that to say that even if we make the seeming wrong decision or we find ourselves down the wrong path, we can always, and we must always, keep coming back and keep building that beautiful home in our heart and our soul, and keep becoming the person we most want to be, or the person we believe we would be if we had made the right decision. Like, I shouldn't have gotten this relationship. How stupid was I? He's a jerk. And now I'm giving my power away. Okay, well, who do you want to be? And if you were in the right relationship, who would you be? Well, I'd be in my power. I'd have my voice. I would speak my truth. Great. Start there.
Mm-hmm.
And watch what happens with the next decision.
Right.
And so every decision gives you the opportunity to discover what's in you, what's trying to emerge. And you get to iterate forever and ever and ever. It's like a GPS, right? You're driving and you make the wrong turn and it goes recalculating.
Yeah.
And then it goes, turn left up here. And maybe you don't listen, or you're like, I know better, Siri. And you keep going. And Siri doesn't go, you're such an idiot. Siri goes, recalculating, make a left up here, make a U-turn, turn right. And she'll just keep giving you the next best guidance, even though you keep making the wrong, quote unquote, decision. You keep going off track, she's going to keep giving you the next best choice. And that inner GPS is your God positioning system, or your grace positioning system, or whatever works for you. So that's an important thing for us to embody, that inner trust, that even if I make the wrong decision, I can always course recalculate and make a new decision. Mm-hmm. And I can always come back home again and go, who do I want to be? What's my intention? What am I really doing? And then build that up a little more. And then from there, take the next step. And you will, sometimes slowly and sometimes quickly, get back in alignment again. Mm. And you will be able to restore the lost years. You know, you can get it back. It hasn't, nothing has been lost for real. Nothing that matters has been lost for real. And that's particularly difficult depending on the loss.
Right.
You know, we talk about the great grief and the great grieving, the loss of loved ones. And sometimes the loss, you build a business for 20 years and the whole thing disappears overnight. You have a fortune, a nest egg, and it gets just annihilated in a matter of weeks. It's hard to believe that too, nothing real has been lost. And I'll say that there is no quick fix there. But the journey of actually realizing the truth of that is the journey of awakening your soul.
Mm. Wow. That's profound and deep. You know, and it's there's a piece about, you know, living life and you know, worry or fear that steps in. Can you tell us more about how, you know, when you recognize that, because I think that's the first piece, recognizing that you're living in fear, and then how do you pull yourself back? Like you say, get yourself back into that place.
Yeah. You know, the first step, if you fall into quicksand, is don't be in a rush to get out. Because what's going to happen? It's going to pull you deeper. And so this is why Jesus said, resist not evil. And Buddha talked about the middle path, or equanimity. Jesus talked about, you know, non-reactivity. Zen teaches that. So the first step, whenever you notice you're triggered, or you're scared, or you're upset, angry, whatever, something's happening, is do nothing. Be still. Now, that's not easy. You'll try to be still. You'll be like, be still. You know, that's another form of reaction, you know, and that's okay, you know, and it might take a few moments and a few tries to learn how to build a new habit, which is when the trigger arises, when the emotion arises, when the chaos arises, rather than lean in and attack it or defend it or grip it or push it down or push it away or try to do something about it. We learn little by little to take our hands off of it, to lean back, take a breath, and just be the witness of it. Just observe it. There's fear. Hello, fear. How are you today? And that doesn't mean you're not feeling it. You will feel, it's like, right? And you're just like, and there's a part of you going like that, but there's another part of you that can be like, I see you. I hear you. I got you. I'm not denying you. I'm not detached. There's a difference between detachment and non-attachment. Non-attachment is the middle path. It is, I'm very much present with you, but I'm not engaged. I'm not reacting. I'm holding. I'm witnessing. And so that's where we're working to have more of the ability to hold. And you might be able to be like, fear is just like, and you're like, oh, it's too much. I can't do it. And then you get like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. 2 seconds. Got 2 seconds on the clock, right? And then you get up and you move around, you do some jumping jacks, or you say some affirmations. I'm okay, and you call your friend, you eat some Ben and Jerry's, and then an hour later you come back down and you go, okay, hello, fear. Okay, I can do it. And you build up the ability. So that's the first step. And what that's called is reclaiming dominion over our attention. Because our attention is the only thing we have ultimately control over. Where attention goes, energy flows, but we don't have control over energy. We don't actually have control over energy. We don't have control over conditions. We don't have control over people. We have control over our attention. And where our attention goes, it's focusing on some idea, some aspect of reality. And as a result, energy flows to that aspect, and that aspect, it creates the conditions for the seed of the potential there to become manifest. So where attention goes, energy flows, the conditions are created for the emergence of some potential. In quantum physics, they call that the observer effect. And so that's all the power we have. And when you observe the fear or the grief or the pain, and by observing, again, I don't mean like clenching and containing it. It might be like freaking out in you. But when I was going through, and still to some extent, but when I was really going through the grief, my whole body and being would be utterly like I was possessed, like I was in The Exorcist, like brought to my knees, wrenching. I mean, I can feel it now, even as I could actually probably go there now, the sense memory, with this level of pain and anguish and sobbing and utterly out of control suffering that was just too big for me to even conceive of. But because of my practice, even then, while I'm screaming at the heavens or pounding the ground or literally falling down in the middle of the street, there's a part of me holding and watching it all. Conscious. Not like I was aware, okay, there goes Derek. It's happening. Let it go, brother. Let it move through you, buddy. I know. Like almost like my partner, like the I that I really am, the I that is we, the love of God, the light. You really can begin to become more identified with that. And so that, you're in the world, you're in your body, but you're not of it. And there's a degree of freedom. And so I could hold myself through that. That doesn't mean it felt good. It felt horrible. It's this, it's like having my soul ripped out piece by piece through my heart.
Right.
Without any anesthesia. It's just, it's pure torture. It's pure suffering. Even then, you can handle it. You can hold it. But if you're there, you're there, but start on something small, like Starbucks is out of mocha, whatever, start, like that jerk just cut me off, start on something small, and you have an opportunity every day to practice, right? So,
Mhm.
so that's step one: observe, be the witness of, become, breathe, hold that part of you. And then eventually you can begin to really pay attention to it and listen to it. What is that feeling trying to say?
Mhm.
You know, if it's fear, the message is you're believing a lie, but the lie is pointing to a higher truth that you are being called to apprentice under. I'm not going to make it. I don't have enough. That's a lie against universal truth or spiritual truth, which you may have to even discover what that means for you and become a student of that. But then it's like, okay, what's the truth? I'm surrounded by love, or I'm supported abundantly, or all of my needs are met. I'm just picking a few examples. Okay, so the fear is my cue, be an apprentice under the truth that all of my needs are met, that I'm taken care of, that I'm safe, that I'm supported. And then apprenticing under that means, okay, how do I build a practice around that apprenticeship? If I really believe, so every day I'm going to meditate on that. I'm going to affirm that. I'm going to pray that. And then I'm going to ask, if I believed that, who would I be in my life now? How would I start showing up? What would I start doing? So you see, you can start to unpack a practice to apprentice. And what you'll notice is as you do that, you grow stronger in that. And the message of fear grows softer and quieter in that particular area. So that's an example with fear. With every emotion has a message. We won't get into all of them today, but they all have a specific message. And so it's really important you don't deny your emotions. You don't try to just merely tap them away, or not saying tapping isn't good, but you don't want to just release the emotion. It's kind of like if you're in a cockpit of a plane and you're a pilot and there's red lights going off, you don't want to just unplug the wire that's sending the electrical current to the red light and go, oh, the red light's off now.
Yeah.
And we're crashing,
Yeah.
right? You want to know, what's the red light telling me first before I turn the button off, or the alarm's going off in the cockpit. You can turn the alarm off, but first know what it's telling you. Oh, it's telling me the engine is on fire. Good to know, right? It's telling me I'm running out of gas. Okay, good to know. Now I don't need the alarm. I got the message.
Right.
So we don't want to turn off the alarms and reject the feelings or just release them. We want to get the message. And the messages are, we're believing a lie, we're stepping over our boundaries, or violating our truth, we are believing something's lost, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
And you'll discover the message without me telling you if you sit and you hold and you listen to those parts of you. They are speaking.
Right.
So that would be the few step process to how to be with that. And notice, it's first feel. What am I feeling? Observe. Discover the message or the meaning of what it needs. What is the need within that seed? By the way, that is really what love is. Love is not merely a sentimental feeling. Love is the force that meets the need in every seed of creation.
Mm. Wow. I love that.
Yeah. So when you're loving yourself, you are saying, I'm going to meet the need of that seed of my life planted in the soil of my soul. Well, how am I going to meet the need if I don't know what the need is? How am I going to know what the need is if I don't listen better? How am I going to listen better if I don't get more quiet and more still and create a space to listen? And you can start to see it kind of becomes logical. Well, I better sit down. I better stop distracting. I better pay attention. I better hold some space. I better really listen. And then you'll start to hear, I just want, why not?
Right.
And then, okay, how do I help that part of me? How do I help her feel safer, feel
Right.
better, feel more powerful, feel more beautiful, feel more loved, be more loving, be more expressed? Oh, and then that literally you'll start to have idea. Well, I've always wanted to do this. I really want to do that. and you start building a practice and designing a way of life that is all about loving yourself, all about serving the full flourishing and flowering of the seed of your potential. And then guess what? It's the exact same thing with someone else. It's their number one job. It's your number two job. Your number one job is you. Your number two job is, now that I'm got the nourishment to flourish, I'm listening to myself, I'm holding myself, I'm not therefore projecting as much on you. Now I can extend myself and say, what do you need? Listening. What does my beloved need? Whether it's my friend, whether it's my pet, whether it's my flowers, whether it's whoever. What's really needed here? And the first thing is needed, lo and behold, is the same thing. Hold space, witness,
Right.
listen, care. And eventually they'll say it or you'll hear it. And then serve. So it's the same process. And then as you're in the process of that, it might trigger you and you'll be like, great, now I got to hold that part of me and listen to that part of me. And it's just this cycle back and forth of really mastering our capacity to love,
Yeah. And do you find over time, that it gets easier for you?
Oh, no way. No. Yeah. No, it gets easier. Yes. It gets, it's an interesting question because, to use an example specifically, as already mentioned, and I know, again, you've told your story probably to your community and you've had a great loss. I lost my son and it was beyond excruciating and utterly world shattering and soul and self and identity annihilating. And those words don't even begin to touch the pain.
Right.
And here I am, cracking jokes and talking about it and living a productive and creative and generative life and different, and I've evolved and grown and deepened my capacity to love and to hold love and compassion and my lack of capacity to hold a grudge or to hold resentment, or like the evolution is real. I would still rather have my son back. So have I fully evolved? Probably not. No, definitely not. But have I fully evolved through this loss? I don't think so. And maybe never will. It may be a forever unfoldment in this particular incarnation. But it's definitely gotten a lot easier. And as a result of that, like Navy SEAL level training of the heart, so many other things that might otherwise be a lot harder aren't. So, when you work out, you can work out at a certain level and then you can walk around the block and not lose your breath. Or you can work out at another level and you can run a marathon and not lose your breath. And so you develop a runner's heart. And when you experience life's tragedies and grief, and you go through the fires and the process and the deep soul training of grief, you have the opportunity to develop a lover's heart. And that's a heart that can hold so much more that would normally break somebody else's heart or anger their heart or make their heart close. But a lover's heart can stay open longer and endure more and still be love. So that's a way of answering, yes, it's gotten easier. The reason I stumbled a little bit is because the journey and the school and the trainings don't stop.
Right.
And so it's like, in some ways, it's really hard right now sometimes, and I really struggle some days, and I really feel sad and bad and depressed sometimes. The difference, again, is I have the tools to do everything I just talked about. So it doesn't take me out. It might take me down to one knee and then I get back up again. So in that way, it's easier, but it's also harder because I'm practicing for the next grade, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. And it feels like that to me too. It's almost like levels.
Yeah.
Almost like that. And then, there's a piece of you that goes, okay, well, if I just, get use the tools and get myself through this one. You know.
Yeah, and then you're like, then I'll be on easy street. You kind of believe that. And I used to believe that. And I'm not going to deny it. There's still a part of me that still holds on to that idea that there is a mountaintop to get to. And you can be like,
Yeah.
and I'm done, right? And my experience tells me that is not so.
Mhm.
That's not so on any level. Like I remember just from a financial standpoint, when I used to believe if I could just make this much money a month, then I would never worry about money again. And then that amount came and went, and I was still me making that much money.
Right.
And I was like, oh, that didn't solve it. Okay, if I just make this much money, and then that amount came and went, and I'm like, okay, now I'm actually more stressed out. So that didn't solve it. I'm like, okay, what's the real thing? And then I got down and I understood the deeper meaning and so then I could have the abundance and not be stressed about it or not be as worried about it. But then there's still another level. There's always another level. And if it's not a level in that area, a new level opens up over here.
Right.
If it's health, if it's not health, it's wealth. If it's not wealth, it's work. If it's not work, it's relationships. If it's not relationships, it's soul, it's ego. There's always some evolutionary movement
Right.
of more, right? Because we're all on a journey of unfolding infinity as individual being, as individual consciousness. So, Jesus said, foxes have hole and birds have nests, but there is no place for man to rest his head.
Mm.
And he said, until I rest in thee, meaning until we're just resting in the absolute divine, limitless space. But even then, I believe then life is like, okay, that's enough. Get up. Time to go back to work, right? You got your nap. There's more to do. There's more to express.
That's right. Yeah. And I mean, what would a game be? And I mean, I'm not going to compare life to a game, but it sort of feels like it sometimes. And
Sure.
what would it be if you didn't have another level, right?
Totally.
What would it be? Yeah. So
nobody would want that game if eventually it just was over forever.
that's right. That's right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally.
Well, I know people are going to want more of what they've just heard. And so, can you tell me a little bit about what you offer on your website for people to explore?
Absolutely. I mean, much of what we've talked about somewhere in my trainings and things, I talk about all of this and then some, and lay it out, let's say, in an even more sequential, logical way that you can follow it and practice it and master it. But they can go DerekRydall.com, which I'm imagining you'll have a link somewhere for people. And, there's a main page of free resources, and there's literally multiple free trainings, not just a 10-minute little thing, but like a full training that they can get, multiple audios or videos or whatever. And they're different subjects. So rather than me telling you which one, I would encourage you to go there, feel into it, what's speaking to you, what's calling to you, and just sign up for that free training. And there's also on that site, you'll see I have a podcast, and there's dozens and dozens and dozens of where you could just go through the list and see what topic speaks to me. Right. And, load that into your podcast app or whatever, however that works. But yeah, that's where I would invite you to go. And there's lots of stuff there, obviously YouTube and all that, but just go to the site, everything's there. And if something about what we're talking about today is, if you're going through grief, if you're going through loss, if any of these things resonate, I promise there's something there that will allow you to follow that breadcrumb and that resonance to the next level.
Beautiful. And thank you so much for what you do. Really, really appreciate it. And thanks for taking the time today.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure, truly, my honor.
Is there anything else you wanted to add? I forgot to ask that. Anything else you want to add before we end?
I mean, there's everything else I want to add.
There's so much.
There's so much, I think, let me think, there is something. I think the important thing I would like to share that's hard to hear if you're not there yet, whatever you might be going through, Again, I've lost fortunes, I've lost children, I've lost businesses, all kinds of things. And in the midst of the loss, and even for a while after, words were very hollow and empty. And there felt like such a sense of hopelessness and futility and worse than that. And maybe some of you are in some version of that. Maybe it's not that bad, but some version of you've kind of lost your faith, you kind of lost your hope, or just like I said in the beginning, it feels like whatever's been broken or lost can't be repaired or replaced. And yes, the exact specific form of that is gone, right? The form, the outer shell, the outer expression, but the real essence, the real truth of it, that really brought you the love, the joy, the peace, the fulfillment, is not gone. I promise you. And if you can not just hear my words, but lean on my faith, lean on the frequency that's being activated here, that you, as the Bible said, all the years the locusts have eaten shall be restored unto you. And it's a principle. No matter what's been lost or broken, it absolutely can be restored. And what it requires is just that little grain of a mustard seed of faith, just a little bit of turning your attention back towards life, love, vision, possibility, creativity. Just keep turning it a little grain at a time towards, I'm willing to have more life. I'm willing to be more alive. I'm willing to let in more love. I'm willing. And just a little turn, a little turn, a little turn. And eventually you'll be walking in a different direction. And just if you can lean on that, even though it feels so dark and it might feel hopeless or it might feel too late or whatever, please know that it is not. And the time really is now. And you really can begin to live a life as if you never missed a beat.
Beautiful. Beautiful. What a wonderful way to end this podcast. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. Way to end this episode. I really, really appreciate you taking the time today and appreciate everything that you've brought. Thank everybody for listening. And I send lots of love to you all and see you in the next video.
Yes.
Bye.
Sure.